Okay, Diana Vega, welcome.
Thank
I'm
you.
excited to have you on today and share a little bit of this topic of deciding to be a homeschool mother.
Mm,
So if you want to introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit of you, how many years you've been homeschooling and all those little cool details.
sure. My name is Diana Vega, and I'm happily married. I have one daughter. Her name is Sophia. Um, and we have been homeschooling for 12 years. She is a senior, so she is graduating this year. And that means that she has been homeschooled her entire life.
Wow.
So she hasn't been to traditional school other than the little co-ops that we've had, that she's experienced classroom settings and co-ops that we've been to. But for the most part, she's been homeschooled. Yes. And I I don't know. Uh, I know that when I had my daughter, I was 40. And I enjoyed all the stages. And when it was came time to perhaps sending her to school, I tried the traditional route. I looked at where I had gone to school because I still live nearby. And I even went to an open house to see, but something just wasn't sitting 100%. Not that the place was bad, it was wonderful. I was very welcoming, but I think there was a little bit of the Holy Spirit that was talking to me about where he wanted me to go. And I was scared, to be quite honest. I didn't think I could do it.
Yeah, it is scary when you start getting that feeling.
It is quite scary when you start. Actually, I would say it's sometimes scary throughout the entire process.
Yeah.
So that doesn't go away all the time. There are seasons when you think, oh, I'm doing this and everything is clicking, and other times where you're thinking, I don't even know where this is gonna go. And yet in all of that, God is working.
Mm.
God is working. So what happened was that I was encouraged by some people who had homeschooled in the past.
Mhm.
And as a matter of fact, an old boss of mine, his wife had homeschooled her four children because they were like tennis pros. Um, so I thought, okay, these people look normal. The kids were
Mhm.
great, so let me try it. And when I came to my husband to talk to him about it, he was actually pretty on board. His
Mhm.
concern, however, was that I would be on. He was more concerned about me
Oh,
than about our
wait,
daughter.
something happened? Okay, there we go. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
He was more concerned about me than about our daughter, because he was like, I know that our daughter Sophia is going to shine, wherever she is,
Mhm.
she's going to do well, but you are going to be on 24/7. You're going to be mom, teacher, homemaker. It's like a lot.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, maybe, but I want to give it a try for like a year and see.
Mhm.
And that's how it's been every year. I've always said, okay, we're just going to try this year. And next year rolls
And
around.
then
Okay, we're going to try another year. And I would have to say that one of my biggest concerns at first wasn't socializing. I know that that tends to be like the big, you
for a
know,
lot of moms, that's the big first question,
a
right?
big fear, right? How is my kid going to socialize? They're not going to know how to deal with people. And I have one daughter, so that could have been a really big issue for me. But what I realized, and I think is very important in homeschooling, is that you need to be connected with a group, right?
Mhm.
Maybe in a family that has many siblings, that's your group. And that group helps because there's a lot of different personalities, and there's different things that need to, dynamics that they learn at
Mhm.
home. in my case, I was very blessed to to be aware of a group that was very welcoming and very much in line with what I believed was important for homeschooling.
Mhm.
And there is where my daughter had a lot of her interactions. I also had her in ballet, so she had interactions there. So that socializing was not so much my concern. What I was more concerned about, believe it or not, was that I went to school and I graduated from university with a bachelor's degree in business. So I didn't feel that I was prepared to teach, and much less to teach reading. How am I going to teach my daughter to read?
Mm.
So that was my biggest fear.
Yeah.
And what I can say is that, well, homeschooling is really a way of life. It's not just bringing school into the house and sitting
The
down in a
lifestyle.
desk.
Mhm.
Right. So it's more of a way of life, right? Everything becomes a teachable moment. It's
Mhm.
kind of funny because, later on the kids are like, okay, yeah, so what are you going to teach me now, right? There's always a teachable moment in something, in anything that happens in your life. And of course, a lot of things happen in our lives. Um, how we react to certain things that happen in our lives. But I would say that one of the beautiful things, besides seeing my daughter grow in tremendous ways, is that really the Lord works more on me.
Mm.
And my thought of homeschooling, because again, I was afraid I was not a teacher, was that I wanted a curriculum that came in a box that told me exactly what to do every day with a schedule, and I would follow it to a T because I'm very good at following instructions. And then that would be the success for my daughter. It turns out that my daughter doesn't particularly learn that well under those conditions. She likes a little more of, a variety of things.
Mm.
And and sometimes learning standing up or jumping up and down or doing different things, not necessarily at a desk.
And
Sometimes it
that's
was in,
something you discover in homeschool also, right? Like I've been
yes,
discovering that lately too.
yes, you do discover many, many things,
Mhm.
many things. So it that's why I say it's a way of life, because if you feel called to do this,
Mhm.
um, I believe God equips you, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then he slowly, at least for me, it was slow because I
Mhm.
if not, it would be, hit me over the head. But slowly, what he showed me was, you need to trust me. I've called you to this. You need to trust me. I picked you to be her mom. You need to trust me. And like I said, I wanted that little box. I wanted to know exactly how I had to do it. I needed to check off things. And that was that was not a little bit, that was a lot of pride in me that God was working on,
Mhm.
right? That it wasn't about, it has to be the way I want to do it. And she has to learn the way I learned because that's all I know. No, I needed to think out the box. I
Yeah.
needed to think outside the box. I needed to be open and
Mm.
to learn how she was learning better,
Mm.
and then how I could teach. And so I went to, every year I would go to some type of convention if it was a local one. I never went to the large ones that they have. I've always gone to local ones, or maybe some, that would come on online, which were really good.
Well,
And
I'm guessing you have, since you've been homeschooling all these years, you also have the experience of that, like, things have changed throughout the years, right? Before there was conventions, now I'm guessing like there's so much more curriculum and
yes, yes.
opportunities, communities. How has that changed? Like since you started homeschooling?
Oh, well, I mean, although I will tell you that when I went to the conventions in the beginning, they were large.
They
Even though
were
they were
large
local, they
still.
were large. There were a lot of people homeschooling, which I was happily surprised about, that it wasn't just, a small community. There are
Yeah.
communities all over. After the pandemic, I think that has grown. Some people came to homeschooling because they had to,
Mhm.
because of the pandemic. And I think it wasn't really the homeschool way of life. It was
Oh,
just bringing
yeah.
school home, which is different and stressful and
Yeah,
difficult.
because I think, I'm sorry, Diana, to interrupt you,
Mhm.
but I think the people who experienced the pandemic homeschool experienced like just like go home and do this curriculum with
Yes.
the books, but like it's not like a homeschool way of life,
No,
like what it would
no.
really be a homeschool
Right.
lifestyle.
Right. And it wasn't something where you could like necessarily go out and, and have field trips and do things like
Mm-hmm.
the group that I belong to that just, there's so much that we do that you actually have to sometimes say, no, wait a minute, we got a school.
Mm-hmm.
We got to actually sit down and do some schooling. So
Yeah.
that's how beautiful it is of how active. But has it changed? I think there are people, yes, I think it's changed in a positive way. Perhaps some people
Mhm.
see it negatively still, primarily because of what happened after the pandemic. But for the most part, I like to stay on the positive side. And I think that it has brought positive ideas to people and change in the way they're thinking that, homeschooling people are not strange and they're not hiding
No,
and
and
they're
I've seen your daughter. She's so beautiful. Like she's so
oh,
sweet. She's very social. You can tell she loves God. So beautiful. I
thank
love
you.
seeing like
Older,
when I
yes,
see children like that, it's like such a beautiful testimony to those who are starting with their kids little, because you're like you can see the fruits.
yes, yes. And actually, that's one of the reasons why in our group we do graduations.
Hmm.
And even if it's, two one person,
Hmm.
5 people, 10, it doesn't matter. However many are graduating that year, we do a graduation. And I want to say that since Sophia was 7, we started going and helping and participating as much as we could. And I did it for her so that she could see what the future held. But I also did it for myself because I needed to be encouraged to
Like I
see
can
that,
do
yes,
this.
this is doable. Exactly. This
Yeah.
is doable. Although I thought, oh, that's so far out there. I'm not even going to, I'm so far away from that. And
Yeah.
now here I am where she's
Well,
graduating this year.
well, I experienced the one last year that we went to the graduation, and I was like tearing. I was like, oh my God, what is this? Oh my God. It's so beautiful.
Yes, yes. And again, it's to be able to see those fruits, right? Like the
Hmm.
I think it's in Galatians that says, do not grow weary in doing good. In due time you will reap a harvest, right? So sometimes throughout your homeschooling, you're not really 100% sure until maybe you test them or they do a little something, right? Um,
Diana, and when you were gonna, from the beginning, when you started, like, what would you say was that little spark that made you like, okay, the Lord is calling me to do this, you know? Because like many mothers are probably like start feeling that. I know I had to pray about it, and there's like a feeling there that you're like, something starts calling you, right?
yes.
And then what was that little thing that you're like, okay, like this is, like I feel like the Lord has called me to that. I'm gonna do this.
That little thing was Sophia.
Hmm.
It was actually her.
Hmm.
Like I said, I had her when I was 40. I had had miscarriages prior to her. And so at 40, I thought, or at 39, I thought I'm pretty much not going to have children. This is just the way it's going to be. God will help me to share the love that I have in my heart in other ways. Um, And I remember asking one time, I remember saying to the Lord, your will be done, and I will surrender and accept. But my will would be to be a mom because I want to understand the love that you have as a as a father, right? I want to understand that love a little bit more. So when I had Sophia at 40, and here I am 43, 44, and people are already, hey, are you going to put her in preschool? Hey, are you going to, 45? Well, she going to go to kindergarten? No, no, we're still having fun here. First grade comes around and I'm like, I I don't want
You
this to
want to
end.
enjoy every second with her, yeah.
Yes, I want to enjoy it. And I think I can. And I remember hearing someone say to me, it's funny, you're a parent, you teach them how to feed themselves, you teach them how to walk, you teach them how to you potty train them, and how to, be respectful when they're little, and how don't touch this and be careful with the heat, and don't touch the stove and all of these things. And all of a sudden, when they get to 6, you can't teach them anything. Like you got to give them to somebody else. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, so maybe we'll try it. Maybe we'll try it and see. I
Mhm.
just thoroughly enjoyed her presence and
Mhm.
being around her and watching how she loved life and everything that she did, as you see your kids that are learning and you can see those little wheels turning, right? But I will say every day has not been roses.
Of course, no. Yeah.
No.
Homeschool is definitely work of love and sacrifice, but I think like for example, seeing testimonies like yours, it's like something in you is like, this the hope of like that this will the fruits will be seen, all this love, like I could only imagine like when that day in graduation I was thinking of like what that mom must have been feeling, like she must
Yes.
have been like, oh my goodness, finally this day.
Yes.
So I was
Yes.
like, oh my God, Lord, grant me the gift of getting there, right? For example, like once high school comes around, I'm guessing there's a lot of moms that also do the transition to school or decide if
Mhm.
they're gonna keep them still homeschooling. I'm guessing that's different for everyone, right? Or
Yes, it
every different
is.
mother, but I guess it's something to discern with the child every year, right?
Absolutely.
How did you
Absolutely.
handle that part, like in deciding?
Well, I think Sophia, again, going back to Sophia,
Mhm.
she was in a ballet studio, and all of the people, all of the students there and her friends went to school. Most of them went to public school. And so there was a time when they were getting ready to audition and stuff to be able to go into a very prestigious dance high school that is public here locally. And pressure was put on her. I'm not going to say it wasn't, that, she should also audition. But she herself discerned and said, you know what? I want to graduate with my homeschooling friends.
Mm.
So, in my case, I didn't need to struggle too much with that. I know that there are some families that their kids get to a point where they're like, no, I want to at least try it. And
Experience.
there's no harm in that, right? I think also you have to respect every family in discerning what is best for their family and for their child. I know some homeschooling families that one child went to school, to a traditional school, and the other one stayed home because they didn't want to go. So and another family whose child said, I want to go to high school, when they were a freshman, went to high school, and had their first year as a ninth grader, and when that year finished, decided, I don't want to go back. And there's others that say yes, and they continue and they graduate from the traditional school. So I think it depends on your family. It is something you have to reevaluate often. It's kind of like a marriage, right? It's kind of
Yeah.
like you always yourself, you have to do a an examination of conscience, right? So you have to also examine how the marriage is doing, and you have to examine how your relationship in the family is doing, and
Mhm.
how your finances are doing, and all those
Yeah.
things. Same thing here. You
Yeah.
have to reevaluate, how is it going, how are they doing, um, and change curriculums, right? Maybe it's the curriculum that's not
Yeah.
working for the
Or
child.
activity or
Yes,
or group, right?
exactly. exactly. So it could be so many things.
I find it though beautiful that you had one daughter and like you homeschooled, because I know there sometimes when it's a one child, some moms are more afraid of homeschooling
Yeah,
because, or maybe because of the myths, not so much because
true.
once you're in there, you know that there's so much opportunity of socialization and
Exactly.
that there's good socialization, right? Because that's what I've been
Yes.
learning, that it's more of like,
Yes.
so socialization. But
Yes.
but like maybe when you're out of the box, you have that fear, you don't know what to expect and how it'll be. Or if this child has been schooled already, it's harder, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Like some children, some families have their child go to first, second grade, get their reading in, and then bring them home.
Mhm.
I didn't do that. So like I said, my main concern was her reading. And when she finally did read, I personally felt like that was my graduation. I was like,
Mhm.
okay, I got her to read. Uh and and it was, again, it was one of those things that just clicked. The beautiful veteran moms that had many children, that had gone
Mhm.
through many different, because they would say, well, my this child of mine learned reading this way, and this other
Mhm.
one learned it this way, and that other one, and they're all brothers and sisters, so they learn differently.
They learned it.
And that's the beauty of homeschooling, that
Mhm.
they're not all, they don't all have to learn the same thing the same way, right? But what I was concerned about was like, she's the only one, right? So am I going to, she trial and error with this poor kid? She's the one that's going to get everything. But, um, and I had also heard that families that had more children, the older children, the little ones learn by osmosis because they're hearing what the older ones are learning. And there's even some subjects that you can teach to get some, not like math, but others that you can teach everybody. And then the older ones give you
Yes,
maybe a little more work, and the little ones, maybe they
I've seen
color.
those. There's now
Right.
so much more curriculum that is like subjects. Depending on the subject, it
Yes.
can be more for the whole group. Mhm.
Yes. And then that's also easier on the parent, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
And everyone gets to learn together, right? And another thing that people learn during homeschooling, I didn't have any more children, but you learned different, life happens, right? So you have to move, or a baby comes,
Mhm.
or um those are good things, right? But if there's a job loss, or if there's an illness in the family, these are things that the children learn.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? How do you work through around that? How do you pray about it together as a family?
That's also a beautiful thing. I'm sorry, Diana, to interrupt,
No,
but
no.
the prayer,
Yes.
like
Yes. How do
you
you pray
can involve
about
it
it?
more throughout your day than, at
Exactly.
least I've seen that benefit in homeschooling as a pro, that
Yes.
prayer is
Yes.
more a part of our daily life in everything.
Prayer is prayer is a part of daily life, and God is not a subject.
Mhm.
God is in everything, right? So you bring God into everything that you do, from the minute you wake up to you having your breakfast to your do whatever subject you're doing, you bring God into it because he created everything. Whereas, and that's what I loved. I really loved that because it wasn't just, okay, we're gonna take out your religion book. Here's
Mhm.
time for us to learn religion and then put it away, and that's it. We don't think about God anymore. No, it was it was incorporating God into everything, so that he wasn't just compartmentalized somewhere. He is a part of everything that we do. And that, I think that is key. That is where the relationship grows, right? Where they start to understand that, God is in everything, and God created them, and God is in every decision we make.
Yes, and I think there's something special when it's coming from like the home, right? In their daily life. Like, of course, it's still good if it's coming from the school and they're like a Catholic school or a Christian school. But
Yes.
I feel like there's something really special when it's like involved in our daily life at home in the morning when we're eating breakfast or lunch, or maybe just throughout our day, we just happen to have a conversation about forgiveness because
Yes, because it
something
was necessary
happened.
to have.
Because it was just necessary to have the conversation, because as a mother you know your child, so you're like, okay, like that attitude is unacceptable or
Right, right.
Mm.
Or even because here's another thing. Sometimes one of the arguments that I've heard is that, you spend too much time with your kids, right?
Yeah.
And so when you spend a lot of time with people, you're gonna step on their toes because it's just it's just easy, right? You happen to be together all the time, you're gonna step on each other's toes. And it doesn't only happen the children with us, it can happen with us and the children. So I also learned again, because I think it's a way of life, and God was working and is still working on my heart through homeschooling,
Mhm.
was to learn how to recognize when I did something that was not right,
Mhm.
and to go to Sophia and say, you know what, I shouldn't have said that way.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry, will you forgive me? Because it's important for the child to learn how to ask for forgiveness themselves and how to give it also,
Mhm.
right? um if nobody ever asks them, hey, will you forgive me, then they don't know how to give that in the future. So there's just so many lessons. That's why it's a way of life. It's not just
Mhm.
history or English or grammar or spelling or math. There's so much more.
Yes. And I think there's learning seasons, right? Like, for example, now that I have the littles, I think I've gone through like that hard, like when you first start homeschool, you hear that it's like the first year is like a tryout year, you're learning and you feel like you got the whole curriculum you ordered and you're like, okay, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. It's like, okay, we're ready. And then and then after the first year goes by, I feel like the second year is actually the tryout year, because it's like, okay, actually that did not happen as I planned.
Yes, you're so right.
Everything is not going as I thought. So now I have to like have like now I feel like I'm going like through a season of revival.
Mhm.
But it's been like life, like, okay, like how like this wasn't working for me in homeschool, because I realized that that wasn't homeschool like how I pictured it. Now
Right,
it's like, okay, and now I see how my kids are. What do I need to do for their needs, for like what's gonna work in our home for this?
right.
And then I guess it changes every season depending on what's going on, and we're growing together.
Yes, yes, so true. And everybody's homeschooling is different. Your homeschooling is not
That's
going to look like
true.
mine, mine's not going to look like
Mhm.
yours, and it's okay. And
Yes.
it's okay. It's what works for your family. So, it's so funny that you say that, because I think that's very wise. The first year, it's kind of exciting. It's kind of like, okay, let's
Yeah,
see
I
how
feel like
everything is a nuance, right? The second year is like, oh wait, this is really happening, and it wasn't happening. So, so
I feel
what do
like
I
the
do?
second year is the
Yes,
more like,
yes.
and if you're having any babies, then it's probably gonna be like a rocky season.
Then you bring something else into the story.
Yeah.
Yes,
But I
absolutely.
feel like there's those little moments that show you that, wow, like it restores your heart, your soul, and you're like, okay, that's why I'm doing this.
Yes,
That and that wouldn't happen if my child probably was in school. I don't like it, or maybe it could, but I'm not. I'm like, it feels like to me like there's something special about it.
yes,
Those little
yes. And I
moments.
do think, I think God allows you to see some of the fruits, maybe not all of the fruits, all at once, but He does allow us to see some of the fruits as we're going, because it helps us to be encouraged and to see others and maybe to hear others. Some people get criticized very much for homeschooling. So that's why being in a group is so important because, and you can see them as often as you want or as little as you want, but it allows you to have support of people that are doing the same as you.
Mhm.
Again, not exactly the same because they may be doing it a little different, but that support you in your decision to at least try it.
Mhm.
Um, and sometimes people are concerned, oh, I'm going to ruin my child.
Mhm.
No, I haven't seen that, I
Yeah, I
haven't
think
seen
that's
that at
one of the
all.
hardest parts about for some people about making decision because of what the reactions might be around them or how they'll be looked at.
Yes,
Mhm.
exactly. And some people go as far as to be concerned about, well, how am I going to get my homeschooled child into college? You
Yes.
know, well, I have actually heard professors personally in college, friends that have said, I prefer a homeschooled kid because they have critical thinking.
Mhm.
They, you don't have to tell, they'll figure it out
Mhm.
basically because they learned through homeschooling that, everything is like a process. And if you're not, if you're given the raw materials, they will work it out. They will figure out how, they'll try it different ways. Whereas sometimes that doesn't always happen to people that go, not everyone, but in some traditional schools, you are just fed information like a computer that's inputted stuff. And that's a lot in your hard drive.
Yes.
And if you're asked something out of that, it might be a little difficult to tap into what you were given.
Mhm.
So, and I know that a lot of colleges are, I see it. I mean, my daughter is going to be taking a gap year now
Mhm.
before she goes into college, but I've seen it with a lot of other people that the colleges are very open
Yes.
to homeschooling
No,
children. Yeah.
and now that there's so much resources and
Yes.
material and curriculum and more moms coming together to help. I know that not all areas are easy to find groups.
Yes.
So is it still like deciding to homeschool is still a good option in the sense that
I would say
it's hard to
yes.
find group?
I would say I would go as far as to say there's probably more groups out there than we think.
Yeah, I
You
think
may have to
so
do a
too.
little bit of searching. But there are, I started 12 years ago, and this particular group that I'm in, um, had been around for already 12 or 13 years. But back then when I started, they didn't even have a website yet.
Mhm.
So I found it through an article that I read in a Catholic,
Mhm.
um, in a Catholic newspaper. That's how I found them because it wasn't something that was talked about a lot.
Yeah.
But I think there's more groups, and here's another thing. A group can be two families. So if you find somebody else that's homeschooling, try, and you can't find a group, then try to make a group, just the two
Yeah.
of you, and see how it goes.
I've heard
And
that also. It's very
yes,
common to
yes. And
have
you
like
try,
one or two paths.
yes, you
Mhm.
go to your church or you go to the park or you go, you seek, you try. And
Yes.
that's all you can do. You can
No,
try.
and I think like in prayer, the Lord starts like revealing things. You know, first you make the decision. I feel like that's kind of how it happened with me. Like we made the decision in prayer for some time, listening to the Lord calling us. And then the Lord answered, right? He gave us the sign. And then after that, it was like, okay, Lord, I like what else I need. Like I needed the sign. Now I need to find a group. And then the Lord, revealed you guys and that was very good too and a blessing. And then now the Lord, in each season, you're like, okay, what do I need?
Right.
But I was actually listening to this podcast called Read Aloud Revival. I don't know if you've heard it. It's
No.
very good. It's for
Yes, okay.
homeschool mothers.
Really?
And the mother was saying that there was a season where her daughter was kind of left. They had a whole group for a long time, but when high school came around, a lot of the friends went to back to high school. So then they
Right.
had to search for a new group. So the mom
Yeah.
would drive like maybe 45 minutes to take them to the next to a group. But I guess it just depends on seasons, you know. But
Yes.
I think also that sports and classes are a good option too, you know.
Yes.
And then if you have brothers and sisters, I think that they become best buddies also too.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes, like I said, sometimes some days are are rough, but
Yeah,
I remember somebody saying, the worst day in homeschooling is still better than the best day somewhere else. If
yeah,
if your choice is to homeschool. So and there's nothing wrong with trying, and if it doesn't work for your family, then it's okay. It's something that you discern. Um, but I remember people saying, "Oh, I can't wait for my kid to go back to school because they're driving me
yeah. You
crazy."
hear
Or
that a lot in in mom groups.
yeah, and I think, to be fair to them, they have a lot on their plate too. They're trying to
Yeah,
juggle a lot of
it's not
things,
easy.
and the kids get bored because they're not being fed. Um, and so yeah, it gets a little hard, and I just remember thinking I'm grateful that I have always wanted to be with her. And
Mhm.
and I've never been like, oh, I can't wait for you to go somewhere.
I
So
know. I've never had that feeling too. I'm actually having the challenge of like now because I homeschool, still finding those little bits of time to force myself to like, you need to take a break.
yes, yes,
Because I have the desire in my heart to always be with my children, but then it also like take that little recharge, you know,
yes.
to
And
keep.
I would say, that's a very good point that you're bringing up. I would say that that is almost, if not as important as any curriculum that you're trying to find that would work for your child, or making sure that they checked off what was on their chore list,
Mhm.
or teaching them about virtues. Um, right up there in your planning, your monthly planning, your weekly planning, your daily planning. Um, you need to set some time aside, however much that can be, because for everybody it could be different, and every season could be different, but you do need to recharge, as you say. You do need to put you as a priority in it. We can only give what we have, right? We can't give from an empty cup. So we need to make sure that that cup is full. We need
I
to go to the
believe
well,
in
right?
that too.
Yes. We need to go to the well. We need to accept that God doesn't want us, He doesn't want us to be martyrs in our families. He wants us to be, I'm sorry, He doesn't want us to be, um, how would you say it? Like gloomy martyrs. We're going to sacrifice. We're going to die to self. That's
Yeah.
part of being a mom. But He wants it in joy, right? And that doesn't mean that you have to have a smile from ear to ear all the time, because that's a little fake as well. However, if if you're going through a hard time, then you might need to take a little break. If you're going through a wonderful time, then, and all of these times that you're having are important for your children to be aware of and to see. Otherwise, how will they learn how to deal with things themselves, right?
The
The Lord
hard.
says, you will have tribulations, right? You will. That's not a question. You will have tribulations, but fear not, because I am with you. So if we don't show our children when we have some tribulations, they don't have to know all the details, but whatever, that we have a tribulation, but we go to the Lord and we ask for His help, and we pray and we wait and we trust, then how will they learn that? They won't. They it'll be very difficult for them. And there was a season in my life, in our homeschooling life, where we had a death in the family that I've shared with you, that was very, very difficult. Um, and even there, when there were moments when I could not open a book because my head couldn't do it, and so therefore my daughter was not going to, I couldn't ask her for that either. There was still, the Lord was still using that time to teach us both how to lean in to Him, and how to navigate grieving, right?
Mhm.
So um again, not perfectly, not, not everything worked just the way it should, but uh a lot of a lot of good came from moments that we thought were very hard.
Mhm.
And had I not been homeschooling, um I think it would have been very, very difficult. I think that
Mhm.
it would have been more difficult and less connection and more distance,
Yeah.
um, and a harder time healing. I do believe that.
Mhm. Oh,
Yeah,
that's beautiful, Diana, in the sense of like going through a hard season and being able to, yeah, like mourn together in the sense of like separating.
yeah,
I think homeschool does have that gift of like being able to peacefully like go through what you're going through or like
right.
slow down and not have to get
Yes.
back to life or just embrace what's happening.
Right. And not pretend that, okay, this happened, you got to move on, keep
Yeah,
going.
let's
No,
go
because
back to.
that doesn't, that really, that's just, you're just waiting for the blow up 10 years down the road.
Yeah,
So you need
exactly.
to embrace what's happening right now, as hard as it is. And those seasons, right? Because there's things resurface sometimes and stuff, and that's okay. Again, it's giving yourself that pause that sometimes in our very busy world, we
Mhm.
don't afford ourselves that pause, and the world doesn't give you that pause, right? You're not allowed to, you don't have permission to pause. You got to go. So we show that to our children in homeschool, that pausing is important, right? Because if not, I find that sometimes kids have a lot of anxiety because it's like one thing after the next, after the next, after the next, and it's okay to pause. It's okay not, it's okay to be bored. It's okay not to have something to do. You find something different to do,
Yeah,
you
I
know?
like that. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
feel like we're very judged as like, oh, kids are gonna be bored and kids are gonna be, of course, we have to find them activities, but it's okay for them to be bored one afternoon. I feel like that's when they usually pick up the books, you know?
Yes.
They're like, I'm bored. And then you see them reading like 30 minutes later. And then it's normal for them to read because when they're bored, they pick up a book.
Right.
So I like that. That I've been enjoying a lot about homeschool. Diana, okay, so to close up really quick, like what advice would you give like now 12 years later, that what's that feeling like now that you're not closing the chapter because you're always going to be mothering and
Yeah.
living life as a mother, but like now that the homeschool journey is coming close to that I wouldn't say end, but like the gift finally, like the trophy. Um, what would you advise someone starting in the journey, or maybe like deciding to, or even having a hard season, like to what gift has this, you know, given you? I don't know. That's a lot of questions, but like the
No,
one
that's
you
okay.
close with. What?
Oh, there's it. I I am so beyond grateful for having the opportunity to homeschool, and the relationship that I have with my daughter, and um, the relationships that I made with other moms and other children that also homeschool. Uh, I think I think I would say, um, don't give up. everything that we go through, any moment will pass. If you're having a hard time, that moment will pass. I promise you it will pass. Uh, and then there will be another moment, and that will pass too. I think we go through life sometimes thinking that we have to have everything just so. At least I know that that happened to me. And when you realize that that's not reality, then you can really enjoy whatever you have that moment. So enjoy every day, even though you plan for the future, even though you have your curriculum, just enjoy the day. And if that day doesn't it doesn't turn out the way you thought or everything that you wanted, it's okay. It's okay. You'll have another day to do something different. So enjoy the day. Um, give give yourself pause. Give your child pause too, right? They don't have to meet a certain standard for you. You love them no matter what. No matter how they learn, no matter what they get, you're still gonna love them and everything is gonna be okay. And just don't give up. Just keep going to the well. Every time you think, I can't do this again. I don't think I can do this. And sometimes you slam that book. Um, just go to the well and you will find the strength that you need to tackle another day. So if you take it one day at a time, and I know that sounds cliche-ish, but it's true, before you know it, 12 years have passed, or 2 years have passed, or however long has passed, and you reap the rewards.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Diana. And what
Thank
would
you.
you say is one of the greatest gifts that homeschool has given you, like this journey?
I would say it's given me a closer relationship to God,
Yeah.
a more of a true surrender to him, to his will. And that is a very big gift, because it has taken the burden off of me that I have to figure everything out and I have to do it perfectly. I surrender to him and to his will, and know that his will is good and his plans are good for me and for my family and for my child and for my marriage and for everything. And I just have to, sometimes what happens to me is when I stick my foot in and I want to be the one that changes and works things out, then
Yeah.
he just has to sit back and go, okay, you're you're gonna do it your way. We'll see how it works. And so this homeschooling has definitely given me, out of necessity, right, a deeper relationship with God and more of a surrender to his will.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, sometimes we think we're homeschooling only for our children for because it's a gift to them or what we have in our heart, but then it turns out like it transforms us.
Yes, yes.
Thank you,
And I
Diane,
would,
so much.
can I say one last thing?
Yes, of course.
At one time, I remember thinking, oh, my daughter, she's probably, I don't know if she really liked this all this time. This is probably like a year and a half ago. Because, like I said, sometimes some kids will be like, oh, I should have gone to school. I wish, I kind of missed out on that. So anyway, and I remember hearing her say that she was talking to another friend of hers, and I remember her saying that she was, well, what do you want to do? And oh, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to study, but I know that I want to be a mom and I want to homeschool my kids. So for me, that was, wow, that was big. That was big for me. That was very big. So I felt a little validation that yes, this was good for her, and otherwise she wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah.
So, and like I said, I wasn't perfect, so not perfect, won't be. So
Yeah, none of us are perfect. We just
no.
hope that they'll like catch on to something.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Ivana.
Diana, thank you. I love talking to you always. Like
Yes,
you always
yes,
bring so much like inspiration and joy and to my motherhood and my homeschool journey.
yes. And I love walking with you in this journey. It's very, very
Yeah.
special. And we'll continue
Hopefully
doing
one
it.
day I'll invite you to my graduate.
Yes. Oh my goodness, that would be so good. I
One
would definitely
day.
be there.
Pray for me.
Yes, yes, we do pray for each other. Absolutely.
Thank you, Diana.
Thank you,
I'm going to
Ivana.
continue to pray for you also. And
Thank
I
you.
hope that anyone listening to this will also be blessed and praying for all mothers who decide to homeschool or are just in the motherhood journey, to be joyful mothers, loving their
Yes,
children
yes.
and
Amen.
leading
Amen.
them to heaven.
Yes.
All right, Diana. Well, thank you so much for joining
Okay.
us. And
Yes. God
I
bless
send
you.
you a big hug.
Same here.
And hopefully we'll see each other soon.
Okay.
Diana, God bless you.
God bless you, sweetheart. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.